Welcome back to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you all for sticking with me in this journey. One of the major roles that I've spoken about a lot on this podcast in our journey is a department within the hospital that we had no idea existed. However, when our daughter was diagnosed, it became something that really changed our life for the better and has been an integral part and will continue to be, and I'll talk about that later as well. But my guest today, Shani, has more than 20 years of experience as a child life specialist, and you guys have heard me mention that before. So today, welcome to the show. Shani, thank you so much for spending the day with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little, I'll kind of go into our story a little bit as well, but I want to hear kind of how you got into the role of a child life specialist. What was the kind of the motivation and the drive to get into a field like that, which is honestly not for everybody, and it takes a certain special person to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my journey is pretty organic, and I feel like the majority of child life specialists enter the field because we've been exposed to it in some way. So I was a child who grew up with a parent who had a very chronic autoimmune illness. I didn't have the support. I didn't know. But as I continued through college and stuff, I became a recreation therapist assistant. So I was working at a pretty big children's hospital down in Southern California, and they had a convalescent hospital that I was working with. So these were kids who were living there, non-ambulatory, just amazing kids. And one of them was referred to the main hospital to have surgery, and they were referred to Child Life. And while I had that role for only about a year, I knew instantly when I was working as a rec therapist assistant that there was something else I was supposed to be doing, and I couldn't quite figure it out. So I was like falling around nursing and OT and PT and speech, and I was just trying to gather. I was like a sponge, just soaking it all up. And then once this child got referred to Child Life, I was like, what is that? And they explained, oh, it's somebody who helps kids have surgery. That's all I got. So I went home, I did my Google search, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And instantly, I just dove in. I ended up applying to a graduate program. So I have my master's specifically in child life. I relocated to New York City, and the rest is history.
It really truly is an amazing kind of a story of how to get into something. You're inspired by it, by personal experiences, which is also, the way that we came into contact with it and everything. With our daughter JC being diagnosed with cancer, it was in the middle of the night in Milwaukee, and we're at that point trying to process what's going on and the next steps of what we're going to do. And I remember this woman coming in with a blanket and a book and sitting down next to JC to kind of explain what was going to happen in a way that she could understand, and really still didn't fully grasp what exactly they were doing or what they were, who they were, and all of that. And over the next 12 days of that stay in the hospital, we became immersed in it, and it's truly a lifesaver. And honestly, going through all of this on this side of it and in having that connection to child life, it's changed your life in a way because it's a positive experience when you're going through a very negative and rough time. And I had mentioned that it really isn't for everybody. It takes a special person to be able to kind of not disassociate your emotions at that moment with a child or a parent or a patient, but also you have to be able to, kind of be there for them. And maybe you go out in the hallway and you break down afterwards because of what's going on. And the ones that we have met and are still in contact with today are truly those special kind of people that I don't think we could have gotten through this journey without.
I'm glad that they were there for you, especially when families are going through crisis. You need that person to can navigate it with you, right? And especially to help explain to JC what is happening, what she's going to experience, and to decrease a lot of that additional trauma and anxiety and fears, and give you guys the supportive tools to manage and continue to cope with it. Yeah, I agree. It just definitely takes a special person, and we all have our way of processing. Sometimes that means, in the closet or drive home, you're crying, or you're just, have really dark sense of humor, or you have your colleagues and you just try to process and vent it. But it's an incredibly rewarding position to have. I feel incredibly honored every day to have this role, and I feel like it was meant to be. This is like something I'm supposed to do. I couldn't imagine not being a child life specialist.
And I think that that sentiment carries with every child life specialist that we have come in contact with from both hospitals that we were experiencing with JC's surgeries and her treatments and things like that. The most special one, and I hope one day that I can have her on to tell, her story and her motivation. Her name is Ashley, and she is incredible, and actually somebody that JC considered her best friend, because that was somebody she was excited to see, in a time when nobody wants to go to the hospital, but they become your friend, they become your family. And it's, again, I never, throughout the entire journey that we had, did I ever see one of them cry, shed a tear. They were very good at controlling that. However, in the end, when we were told there's nothing more we can do, I saw that emotion. Even from behind the masks, I could see that emotion, because you're real people. You're real people with real emotions, and you have families at home, and you see these things every single day, and it affects you. You just have a really, really good ability at, like I said, kind of compartmentalizing it, to know when it's right to let it out and when it's right not to. It's, to say that the department in general, child life specialists as a whole, to me, are not appreciated and paid enough, I think is an understatement. And that's because of everything that they provide. It's so much more than chemo treatment. It's so much more than, a diagnosis plan. It's you're providing such an emotional and spiritual service to not only the patient but the family. I can't say enough about it. And I guess I just have to say thank you for what you do, and for the entire, child life atmosphere, the whole thing that you never know existed. We would never have made it through, like I said, we'd never in a million years without those people.
That's so special for you to say that. And we appreciate it. Child life specialists know that families get it. We see you guys during the darkest times, and where there's that kind of guiding light through it. Not to try to even fix the situations. It's really kind of meeting you guys where you're at, sitting in that muck, and then at your pace, moving through, right? Being able to understand these emotions, how to express them, have really healthy coping skills. But absolutely, we're affected. I have an entire, little shelf here behind me, and it's filled with all the little trinkets that kids have made and pictures. And we bring all of that home. Every single family that I know that I've worked with, and I'm sure the other child life specialists have worked with, they make a footprint on your heart, like forever. You're forever changed. I think I look at life very differently. I parent very differently. And it's because of the families like you who've allowed us to come into your homes and into your lives, and to make that impact, so that we can help you through the most terrible times, but do it through dignity and respect and a lot of love and support.
Absolutely. And I can't say enough. I mean, I really, the praises I can sing is not enough. And before we go anywhere else, it's like, I will also say that my daughter, our senior in high school, is going into child life because of what her sister went through and how she was impacted. And she is dedicated to this. It's something that, your kids, when they're young, I want to be this, I want to be that. And, it changes every year. I know I did it, right? I think we all wanted to be cops and firemen growing up, or cowboys and whatever. And she has not wavered from this one bit, and is already looking into where she's going to do studies, practicums and internships and all these things. And it really is incredible. So with that being said, kind of walk us through maybe like a day in the life. Maybe, I don't know if there's a typical day in the life, but a day in the life of a child life specialist.
Yeah, they're all different. So I'm actually not even in the hospitals anymore. So I'm in private practice, and I serve families in the home. So I'll give you two perspectives. If you're in a hospital, your day-to-day is going to look very different. You basically go in, you kind of get your senses as to who are the patients on the floor. Are there any new admissions? Are any of these kids getting medical procedures? Is there anything that happened, like a crisis overnight? And then you start to make a priority list, because you usually have a lot of kids to one child life specialist. So that's one of the unfortunate parts, is that there's not enough of us working. Not that we don't want to work. There's plenty of child life specialists. There's just not, the programs are just not large enough. There's not enough funding to hire us. But you then have to kind of have your priority, and you go in and you check in with those families who are the ones that are the most critical, that you need to see to get in to provide those interventions. It could be preparing them for a medical procedure. It could be helping them through a procedure. It could be doing bereavement work or end of life care. And then it could be running a playroom right after of, 5 or 6 kids in there. So you literally are bouncing back and forth. You're also having to do your rounds, and you're meeting with the medical team members. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of documentation. And then there's a lot of like little silly things that have to get done, but are not really where we want to go, like, cleaning toy supplies, or like maybe making a bulletin board, where we would rather spend some of that time in patient care or working on bigger projects. They're also child life specialists. Sometimes their day-to-day might be, a special guest coming in. And so then you're kind of walking them around to introduce them to the kids, or you might be throwing a party. You might be throwing a birthday party for a kid. So it's very different. And it really depends on what units you're in, or if you're just kind of a floater and you go to lots of different units. And then in-home services, that's what I provide. I don't have an office space, so my day looks like driving to families' homes. I get to come in and get to sit, whether it's at their kitchen table or, in their playroom. We have the pets there, and we are doing our thing. So I have a lot of kids I have a very large pediatric oncology population. I work with a lot of children who are coping with just other diagnoses, a lot of siblings that I have. So whether they have a child or a sibling who has cancer or another illness. And then I work in hospice. So I contract with a few hospice agencies, and I see either those pediatric patients or the children of the adult patients. So I'm working with them and supporting them and educating them on what's happening to their loved one. And we're doing a lot of memory making. And then I also do a lot of grief support. So bereavement work. I have a lot of families that we just continue to work through all of that grief. And it's all through play and art and creative arts, and just giving them that space so that they can feel safe to process everything and then express it in a really healthy way.
I know. Thank you for explaining it from both perspectives. And to be honest with you, I've never heard of anything outside of the hospital. So how did you become doing this? How did you come to be doing this in a private practice manner? And how does that differ really from separation from the hospital? Is there still communication? How does that work?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've been always a person that kind of thinks outside of the box and tries to just do different things. So when I was working, I became a mom, and at the time we were in New York City, so it was really hard my entire paycheck would have been paying for childcare. It didn't make sense for us. So I said, let me just stay home. But I have such a love and passion for child life that I had to fill the cup some way. So I started to organically do it I was volunteering as a bereavement facilitator twice a month for a grief group. I created a blog called Child Life Mommy at the time, where I was just providing a lot of resources for parents on how to blend both child life and parenting together. How do you prepare your kid to go to the doctor? How do you help them take medicine? Just simple things like that. And then that kind of continued to grow. I wrote a children's book because even my 4-year-old at the time, who I prepared him for everything, he kind of had a little bit of a anxiety because they needed a urine sample, and he was like, what? And I was like, I got him through the blood draw. I got him through the vaccine, but he panicked on that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a book. I'm going to make a book that has real pictures, and it's the language from a child life specialist. And so it's all these little things where you're still doing child life work, but it was in a community setting. And then from there, I got my first referral to actually work with a family in their home. And the minute I sat down on their floor, and I had a 2-year-old sibling, a 4-year-old who had been hospitalized for 6 weeks. And at the time it was undiagnosed. They did not know still what was happening. He had so much medical trauma. We were just doing medical play, and every light bulb was going off in my head. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Just the same feeling I had when I discovered child life. I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. I need to be in families' homes. And I just started to build the practice. So it was during a time too where there wasn't a lot of child life specialists doing private practice. So I got to be kind of part of that pioneer group where we were creating a task force, which created a committee for our Association for Child Life Professionals. And then, got to be part of writing documentations to make sure that child life specialists who were going to do this are staying within professional ethical boundaries. I got to write a chapter and co-write a chapter, I should say, for an entire book for child life in community. There's a lot of different settings where child life are at outside of the hospital. So we got to start to kind of create these things where child life specialists who are interested in going to the community now have access to it and kind of like know that the how to. But I would definitely say for child life specialists, you should have that experience in the hospital. Get that worked, because you can't just jump from graduating, have your internship, and they're like, oh, I can't get a job, I'm just going to start a private practice. We're like, no, go to the hospital. Start there. You need to get that experience. You need to be in positions where, doctors are kicking you out, or if you've got the nurses that don't want anything to do with you. Like, you have to be able to learn to communicate and advocate and work as a team, because those skills will actually help you when you do go into the community, because you're kind of out on your own. Like, I don't have anybody. It's just me. But because I have had that experience, I've been able to create partnerships with, I have like 4 or 5 nonprofit organizations that I partner with. They actually pay for my services to work with families that are under their services. So it could be pediatric oncology, it could be grief, it could be children of adult patients. It gave me that drive to be able to go out into my community and communicate to hospice agencies and now contract with them too. Say, hey, you don't have this service, and you've got a lot of adults who, have children in their home, and these kids don't know what to do. Work with me. I will come in and I'll support these kids. And they start to get the feedback from the families. And so there it just starts to, go right in the right path. But that's just kind of how it's expanded. Or working with schools, if there's like a trauma, a traumatic event, maybe a student has died, or a teacher, and the schools are like, we don't even know what to do. Let me come in. I'll do a whole presentation. We'll do therapeutic activities to help these kids feel seen, help them to mourn and express themselves in a really healthy way, and give them a stronger toolbox for future things that might happen.
I just think that it blows my mind how expansive now this field is and can be. Thinking outside the box, outside of the inner 4 walls of a hospital or a medical facility, and now you can be in the community. Because to be honest with you, in our own personal experience, the home is so healing just by itself. Just being away from the medical side of things, and no matter how much you love your doctors and the nurses and stuff, it's being away from that can heal you so much inside, both as a patient and as a family. So to have that ability, and yes, I do agree, start doing the work at the bottom and work your way up to something like this, get your experience in there, because, when you're in the hospital, it is a team. You may have more than one child life specialists come in at a time and work together and bounce ideas off each other and things like that. So you are essentially now kind of, you're doing it on your own and not having that direct, inner ear feedback at that moment. So, it is definitely get your experience in, but this is amazing that you have that expansion now that can really kind of cater to a group of people or a population that may not have that ability to go outside of the home, or may not have that ability to be at the hospital, whatever the case may be. And now they can still have that service that is so beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, that was one of the reasons why I never wanted to get an office, is because I'm like, they schlep their stuff all the time to clinic and to hospitals and the emergency room. I do not want a family to have to do that one more time for a session. Let me make it easier. Let me come to them. And that's been huge. And for those who don't live in my area, or even kids who are, they're neutropenic and they're like, we really have to like lock down on germs. I'm like, let's do virtual. Like, we can do virtual anywhere. That was one thing we learned about COVID. You could do telehealth anywhere. And so we do that. And you can still, be able to provide those services to families, or to even not even just the kids. Like, oftentimes too, I'll do a lot of consulting with parents. Like, we're having sessions together, and I'm giving them all the tools to like how to support their kids, or this is the language, or, they're saying this and that, and how do I do that? Okay. And we go through it all, we normalize it, and just meeting them where they're at. So it is really taking child life from that chaotic, sterile environment and you're bringing it into a home, which it is so healing. I love going in the homes. I'm like, I have the dogs on me, their cats, like they join the sessions. It's a very relaxed and it's a great way for kids to process. Like they go home. I mean, you've seen this, I'm sure, with your own family. They go home and they have to unpack so much stuff that happened. So it's nice to have that safe space at home.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a huge safe space for us, and I think we noticed multiple times coming home from the hospital the healing that would take place almost instantly, just being in your environment, around your family, around your animals, around sights, sounds, smells, everything that are comfortable to you. You're almost holding back getting better when you're in the hospital because you don't want to be there. Like you're not happy there, you're stressed, and to go home is so incredible. So to be able to provide that service, I think is amazing. And I hope that the field honestly just continues to expand in that way all over the place. I hope that it becomes like a blueprint because it's not to take away anything from the hospital. You need that environment to build the character and the experience of all these new child life specialists that are coming in, but to have that ability, knowing that it's a possibility to provide a service outside of it later on, I think it also is another huge motivator. But for specifically for that, we've got a whole, like I said, my daughter's 17 now. She's going to be graduating this year. Well, yeah, she'll be graduating and going off to college, and this is what she's going to be studying. What types of classes, courses, education should potential child life specialists be looking into? What type of things should they be focusing on?
Yeah, that's a great question. You should be so proud of her that she's even looking to go into this. It shows so much. The siblings have like this empathic older soul. Like it really does change them when they're watching their sibling go through something so traumatic that they continue to hold their legacy by that. So what a beautiful honor that she's doing. But yeah, as far as like what it is, the roadmap to get to child life. Okay, here's the good, bad, and ugly side of child life as a student. It is incredibly impacted. There are more students than there are child life internship opportunities. So that's like the one thing that every student should know going in. It is not going to be an easy experience. You got to know you're going to go in, you're going to have some grit because it's going to take a lot of effort to get to that finish line. That being said, there are things that you can do. Having the opportunity to volunteer with a child life specialist, whether they're in the hospital or in the community, huge, because you have to have volunteer hours. So if you can get into a child life program in a hospital, go for it. Courses, as far as what is required, is you need a minimum of a bachelor's degree in some sort of field that's related to child life. So it could be child development, it could be psychology, it might be like human and health services. Some programs will actually have child life, or they'll have some child life courses that you can take. There are a lot of colleges that don't, though, so you just kind of take your course load, but then in addition, you have to take at least 10 courses that are child life specific, and that's all listed on the ACLP's website. And I think at least 2 of them have to be taught by a certified child life specialist. But there's a lot of like online programs that students will do that they can complete that. Once that stuff is done, then the next jump is like the requirement is the internship. However, because it's so impacted, a lot of hospital internship programs will not accept a student unless they've done a practicum first. And a practicum is essentially the next step after volunteering. So you get your volunteering. Practicum is like kind of like you're still volunteering and everything is unpaid, but you're shadowing a little bit more of a child life specialist. You might have a couple little of assignments to do. And then your internship is a 600-hour internship under the direct supervision of a CCLS. ACLP, the association, has changed things in the last year. So it used to be required under a hospital experience of an internship, full 600 hours. Now they've kind of opened it up and they said It could be anywhere, which has brought up a lot of conversations within our field of like, a lot of us are like, you should have a majority of it in the hospital, because that's the baseline. But that's, that is what it is. That's what the requirements are. And then once you get that done and you've completed your internship, then you sit for your exam. It's a certification exam. And then once you get that done, then you kind of just hold that certification. So you have to continue to do education and you submit that every 5 years and you hold your certification. So it's coursework, a minimum of a bachelor's, child life coursework, practicum, internship, certification. Yeah, it's a lot.
A lot, a lot. Demanding, but necessary to get you ready for something like that. And to be honest with you, I think it was a little bit of a shock, to be honest with you, when we actually traveled to the hospital here in Green Bay where our daughter was treated to meet with Ashley, our child life specialist friend and confidant there, and to kind of get her insight on everything. And it was all the same. There's a lot of work. There's not as many places to put the people that are going through the courses. It's going to be a battlefield, really. I mean, to get into these places, I mean, honestly, her goal would end up in that hospital in Green Bay. Is that a possibility? Sure. Is it going to be anytime soon? Probably not, because again, they're looking for, and we were even told, like, we're looking for this. This is the requirements we're looking for to even take you onto our team or give you a possibility to volunteer or anything like that. So it's a lot of work, but the best part about it is watching our daughter be so dedicated to doing it that she's already looking at hospitals. I think she looks at Texas Children's and things where she could do her practicums and internships just because she wants to be ready. So she's doing the due diligence and the work, knowing that there's going to be a lot of work. But I think she also knows how rewarding it's going to be in the end, because, we go to the hospital and, the child life specialists are, they've got cool T-shirts on and they've got badges and they get all this fun stuff. Like, wow, you get to walk around and play with toys and have fun all day. But look at all the work it took for us to get here. You have no idea what it takes for us to do all this work. But then to know that there's that amount of work for it, you know what? I think that it means that much more, because that means if you were able to push through it and get to that finish line, then that proves your dedication to that field.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And I'm glad that Ashley gave you guys the honest, route of what it takes. The unfortunate part is that there's just not enough internship spots. So you can have, 100 applicants who've done all of the requirements for maybe 1 or 2 spots at a hospital. 100 applicants. Like, that shows you that a lot of people are not going to be able to get those spots. Oftentimes students are applying all across the country, all different places. That's really hard for people too, because it's unpaid. It means you have to relocate. You have to figure out how to save money, or maybe have like some sort of side job while you're doing an internship if you land it. As our programs are, child life specialists too, is we're not a billable service. We're free. We're a free service. There's no billable service for child life, which is a great thing, because if you have a program in like a community hospital and there's child life, that's great. We don't bill insurance. The downfall of that is hospitals are businesses. They want to make money. So they're not really investing into child life because they don't get to, they don't build the insurance for it, which causes a lot of programs to be very small, because a lot of them are based a little bit on hospital budget and a lot more on philanthropy and grants and donations. But that also causes struggles, because you might have, a really large hospital and you might have a very small child life program, and those child life specialists have a certain amount of number of years under their belt before they can be an internship coordinator to take on students. So that takes a little while, and also takes a little while of getting your program ready to take on interns. But the other thing is, because our field, it's more dominant in women, we have babies, and oftentimes then they go on maternity leave. So if you've got an internship coordinator who then goes on maternity leave, that next, spring or fall, whenever they do their internships, they might not have it open because there might not be somebody who can take on an intern. So there's shifts and changes. So for students, it can be really frustrating because you're like, I have a list of all of these hospitals, all these internships, but it's not consistent. It changes throughout the year that maybe they're offering an internship and now they're not. And it's because hospital programs are small. Sometimes people are on maternity leave. And also it depends on the program. Sometimes there's a lot of toxicity in a program, or, you've already mentioned it too, our pay is not great, and that can be really hard on child life specialists. So a lot of them leave the field. They might try to find something else in a similar related field, or they might just take a pause for mental health, or they might go to another program. So all of that makes it really hard for students. And I could tell you from child life specialist perspective, we don't want that for students. We want them to have access. We want them to grow. We know we need new blood coming in order for this profession to expand. It's just unfortunate that every year it just gets harder and harder and harder. So that's kind of where we're at with everything, though.
Yeah. Do you notice over the course of your time, both in the hospital and now kind of seeing it from the outside, do you notice a very high rate of burnout amongst child life specialists?
Enormous. It's always been that way. Even when I was a student forever ago, they would talk about compassion fatigue and burnout and how you need to be able to have really good, strong health, self-care tools. But I think that where the shift has come in, and it's much higher now, is that the students and the hoops that they have to jump through to become a certified child life specialist, they're already getting burnt out before they enter the field, right? It is mentally exhausting. You keep trying to put yourself out there and then you're just not getting an internship. That just takes a toll on them. So there's that. And then I also think that the pay is really not great. And it's, living expenses is increasing. Our salaries are not. And you have that along with, some hospital administrators who really don't care about our programs and don't really help support us. If you don't feel that support and you don't feel the income to justify it, plus what you're dealing with, it is the psychosocial emotional support that we provide is daunting. We are really, it's not just blowing bubbles for kids and helping them through a blood draw. We are working with patients where we also, yes, we become attached to and we really care about them. And we're watching them go through really awful things over and over again, or we're losing patients, right? We're watching codes, and you might have a day where you've had multiple losses or really traumatic things that you're witnessing and you're trying to provide that support through. It adds up. I think that with the combination of it all, that's also why there's a larger increase on, burnout and compassion fatigue.
It all makes sense. And it's, like I said, it takes a special person. And so I look at it every day and, and think, how could I get up and do it every day and not essentially bring it home, I guess, and not, you're dealing with not only the actual in-person, your day-to-day stuff, but then you're also dealing behind the scenes with income and hours and everything else that's going on. So it is a shame, and I hope that it at some point kind of gets better. I hope it becomes a more, one of those fields that just becomes like the world wraps their arms around it, says, you know what, we need to focus more on this. The budget needs to handle more of this, and it needs to be not one person for 10 floors. It needs to be one person per floor. It needs to really become a field that is inviting and not scaring people away, in a sense. And the other thing, which is, it's kind of insignificant, but at the same time, you mentioned something about it, and I was thinking about it. I've never personally seen, and I don't know what this means, a male child life specialist. Is it an anomaly in this field in general? And I'll ask, which ones? And you can be honest, which ones last longer?
They do exist. There's not a lot of them, but they are there. And I think that they also bring so much to the table. I think it's amazing to have different genders, because sometimes you've got kids who are going to actually connect with, a male more than a female. So I would hope that we can continue to expand it. And I love the fact that, like, I think that's the heart of child life specialists too. Like, we love this field. Like, we love serving families. That is like a true, true honor. And we get that love back from families so much, and then from some of your team members as well. But we want people, we want the administrators, we want larger organizations to see that, to wrap us around, to see, like, do you notice that when you have a child life specialist, we've decreased trauma, that the kids are actually coping better. Maybe they don't need as much medication. Maybe they don't even need anesthesia because we've prepped them for it. So it's decreasing things for them, and they're getting discharged sooner too. Like, that's all because we're coming in and doing the things where you don't need to have medication or have children being held down. Like, there are things to do where we can make it a lot much better for families to experience, and there's a benefit